College of Arts and Science. Admissions open. For more details, log into sacas.ac.in.
University of Madras, pursued a diploma in film and video production at NG Technical University, Singapore, and a Royal Society of Arts certificate in TESOL, British Council. She was a nominee of Singapore's Spirit of Enterprise Award 2007, a member of Singapore Drama Educators Association, and founding member of Singapore Storytellers Circle. A certified storyteller, she is part of the advisory board for curriculum architecture for Singapore's School of the Arts and a specialist in early childhood care and education. She designed contemporary English and STEM curriculum, co-designed English language and communication syllabus for experienced B.Ed teachers at the Center for Research in Education and Training in Kozhikode. She is the co-founder, director, and lead trainer of the Singapore company, empowering thousands of teachers and students from primary through to tertiary levels. She has been directing specialist trainers from the UK, Canada, Australia, the USA, and Asia. She is co-founder of India Drama and Arts Educators Alliance and director of curriculum and the principal of the Green Hills Preschool 2018 to 2019. She has led international workshops on process drama, storytelling, and using multimodal and multisensory teaching methodologies with Lambda, London Academy of Dramatic Arts, Speech and Drama. We are very lucky to have you with us today, Ms. Surekha. I now hand over this session to you.
Thank you so much. All of you out there, students, teachers, all the principal ma'am, I'm really, really excited to be here because you've invited me to do something that I enjoy the most, telling stories. So before I go into my webinar today, I think it's very important that we all relax and get ourselves ready for the roller coaster ride I'm going to take you, with so many stories to share, so many things to tell you, and we only have an hour and a half. So everybody, this is what I do with, many a time with my students. We start off with something that gets our focus into the webinar. And I do something called STAR. It's very, very easy. I want all of you out there, whichever part of the world you are in, to smile. The S is for smile. The T is to take a deep breath and relax. So can we all do that together? All of us smile, take a deep breath, and let's relax. And let's do that one more time. Smile, take a deep breath, and relax. Okay. Humankind is in crisis. And we are lucky to be part of this great change that the planet is going through. And life is never going to be the same again. And we've already started experiencing what this is all about. Many a times, pandemics have come and gone on this planet. And every time, let's just look at the Great Plague 400-500 years ago. And the Great Plague was not just in Europe, it was in many parts of the world. There was huge changes which brought, after the Great Plague was over, the change in the Renaissance, the change in the way, work happened, everything changed. And it's very exciting to see what is happening around us. There are major changes happening. So let us start today's session with a story about the Creator himself. Because I was invited to talk to you about the importance of storytelling. So let us look at what the Creator has to say about storytelling. The Creator was looking down upon his creation. The lofty snow-clad mountains, the emerald green forests, rivers like snakes, snaking their way into the blue oceans, teeming with life, with fish, with many, many other kinds of sea life. But on the other side, the meadows full of flowers, the forests full of animals and birds. And then his eyes fell on humankind. He looked at them. There was complete chaos. They were fighting, arguing. There was sadness, confusion. And he held his head and said, "Oh no." His assistant, who was right beside him, said, "Creator, what's wrong?" He said, look down. And when he did, what did he see? The assistant saw complete chaos on the planet Earth. Just like what the Creator saw, there was sadness and fighting and chaos and confusion and anger. "Creator, what has happened?" He said, "I have forgotten to give humankind brains." "What shall we do?" asked the assistant. "Well, I have a bucketful here of gray matter. I want you to take this down to the earth and put a spoonful of gray matter into all the brains of the humankind that are there." The assistant didn't hesitate. He took the bucket and he went right down and he tried, and all he could manage was either none at all or a little bit here and a little bit there. And he came right back and he said, "Creator, this is not working." He said, "I have plan B." The Creator told the assistant, "Take this bucket of gray matter, but this time when you go down, I want you to pick a few good people and put the gray matter into their heads. For they are going to be the ones that are going to be taking the knowledge that I want from humankind, so that their chaos will not be there anymore." Assistant was not very sure. He said, "Are you sure? Are you sure they'll listen?" "I don't think humankind will ever listen." The Creator said, "Don't worry. I have a special way that will make them listen." And so he went down again. And this time he was back with a big smile on his face and he said, "Job done." And when the two of them looked down, all they saw was happiness and laughter and sharing, and everything was fine. So the Creator said, "I think they deserve a new name. From now on, I'm going to call them storytellers, because they are going to be the ones who are going to take knowledge that I want to give them to everybody on the planet." And so you can see how important we storytellers are. And the story, I think, encapsulates the complete essence of what storytelling is all about. But I'd also like to quote for you a quotation from Steve Jobs. And I don't want to make a mistake, so I'm going to read it out. "The most powerful person in the world is the storyteller. The storyteller sets the visions, values, and agenda of an entire generation that is to come." So, ladies and gentlemen, why is storytelling so important? Principal Ma'am was telling us how she, uses it all the time when she teaches. And that gets the children or the students so taken in when you start something with a story. But why is that? And to understand that, we need to understand the way our human brain works. The human brain learns with narratives. The way that the brain is wired is to be taking the narratives and to converting them into different pieces of information. It's almost like a jigsaw. So the narratives are stored in the brain and they are able to make meaning out of these patterns which are created from these narratives. If you go back thousands and thousands of years ago, you will find that the only way the survival of these people, the tribes that were there, or even, the ancient man, I think I would talk about even about cavemen, because you've seen drawings in caves which are 40,000 years old, 50,000 years old. Now they're saying they found pictures in near Delhi, which is over 100,000 years old. They all told stories because it meant survival. If they didn't know what the weather was going to be, what the solar system was showing us, what it was to live together, what disease was, how plants grew, everything, what could be eaten, what could not be eaten, what were poisonous, what were medicinal, everything was done through telling of stories. So the human DNA is actually wired in to listen and understand and learn through stories. So what happens when I tell a story? So when the storyteller tells the story, what happens to the listener? The listener starts getting into the same the vibration of the teller. The brain waves are almost in the same wavelength. So what is happening? A lot of very interesting chemicals are immediately released. Dopamine is one of them. It helps with memory. It helps with calmness. What are the other ones? There's many others. There's cortisol, there's oxytocin. All these chemicals are released, and immediately the listener is taken into the story as a character into the story, and he or she lives the story through the teller. And this is very important because with this, the listener is understanding all the obstacles, that conflicts which are happening in the stories, and coming up with his or her own ideas of the solution. So it's very, very important. It's part of our DNA. And what I wanted to, add here, because it's very important that you understand why storytelling, because as adults, we always wonder, yes, storytelling is for children, but adults, so much of research has gone in, because now compared to even 20 years ago, there's lots of things that can map the brain when a story is being told. And they can actually see which areas are being lit when a story is told or when something is given to them to read, like data or in a book. And there's only one part of the brain that lights up when that you are doing that. But when you are listening to a story, many, many areas of the brain are immediately lighting up, and all these chemicals that I spoke about are released. And the most important thing about storytelling is it starts from the heart, oxytocin. It builds empathy. So you take the story, and make the listener come into the story, and then they live through it with the multisensory way that you tell the story. They're going through, they become the protagonist, they become the character in the story. They look at the conflict, they're finding, what are the solutions that are going to happen in this story? And in this way, a lot of higher order thinking skills are happening. And we are always talking about the 5 C's. What are they? They're very, very important 21st century skills. And by telling stories and listening to stories, a teller as well as a listener, we are using our 5 C's, which is very important skill to learn, isn't it? So this is why stories are so, so important. And what happens is, in a story, very, very complex ideas can be put into a simple, simple story. And what happens is the brain is able to understand it and look for things which are inferred, which are not there exactly in the story, but they can infer it. And that's what we want. Those are the higher order problem solving skills, cognitive skills. Many, many parts of the brain, as I told you, are getting activated. So let me quickly do a story for you. And you can see how through a simple, simple story, a very, very important message has been put in. And this is a very simple children's story, and I'm doing it because I want you to kind of wake up with this story. And it's called The Two Goats. What is the story of the two goats? We all know it. It's about two goats who meet on a bridge and they fight, and then they fall into the water. And then they realize that if they fight, they're going to fall into the water. And the only way that they can cross the bridge is if they help each other by crossing it, by making space for each other. Now, let me do it, and I want you to enjoy it. It's a very, very simple story, but see what the story can be taken to a level which makes it so much fun for the listener. But an important message has been put inside for the listener. Okay, so here goes. The two goats. Hill, hill, goat, goat. One day, goat came down, crossed the bridge, ate some grass. Yum, 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 yum. Goat went back. One day, goat came down, crossed the bridge, ate some grass. Yum, 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 yum. Goat went back. One day, two goats came down and crossed the bridge. I want to go first. No, I want to go first. I'm stronger than you. No, I'm stronger than you. Push, push, shove, shove, splash. The two goats fell in the water. The two goats came out. He's so uncooperative. She's so uncooperative. So this is version 1. Because, when you do a story, usually in India, in schools, in primary schools, it's always, what is the moral of the story? So we need the children or you to find the answer coming from within you rather than us pushing something inside you. So look at version 2 of the story. Hill, hill, goat, goat. One day, goat came down, crossed the bridge, ate some grass. Yum, 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 yum. Goat went back. One day, goat came down, crossed the bridge, ate some grass. Yum, 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 yum. Goat went back. One day, 2 goats came down, crossed the bridge. I want to go first. No, I want to go first. We have a problem. What shall we do? I have an idea. Why don't we squeeze? Yes. He's so cooperative. She's so cooperative. So which goat are you? So which goat are you, ladies and gentlemen? So it makes you think, oh yes, Major Rajan is saying me a first goat. Okay. Now this story also has a story behind it, which I want to share. This was shared by a very famous person. She's a storyteller. But when she was younger, much younger, maybe 20 or 30 years ago, she worked in a library in New York. And the particular library was in the Bronx, which was a very African American area. And 30 years ago, New York was a very, very different New York. There was a lot of, gun culture, especially in the Bronx area, dysfunctional homes. Nobody came to her library. And even if they came, they would just run away. All these teenage, African-American boys and girls. And she said they were so huge, much bigger and taller than her. And there were little ones too. But nobody wanted to listen to her stories. Nobody wanted to borrow any of the books. And then she came up with this version and she said that was it. All these big kids, they enjoyed it so much that she said, then I never looked back. My library was never without children coming and listening to my stories and borrowing books. So you can see, we all have that in us. However simple a story is, it can hide within it a very, very important lesson for all of us. And this is all about cooperation in this world. Can we do it? Can we live without cooperation? No, we can't. We need to work as a team. We need to put our thoughts together and find a way when there's an obstacle blocking us. And that's what this story is telling us about. And then if you look at all the simple stories from Aesop's fables to the Panchatantra to Jataka tales, or look at the, even older ones like the Iliad and the Odyssey or the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, everything from war to love to, jealousy, you name it, everything is in these stories. And it's been put in such a way that we listen. And what happens when we listen, we understand it much, much better. It is like COVID. If you're told to wear a mask, we don't want to wear a mask because it is a rule. It's been, without mask, without injection, you cannot come to school. Nobody wants to do it. America is seeing that happen. But if it is packaged into a story, then people want to listen and they will do it. So that is the magic of a story. And now I want to show you how any story can be made interesting and changed, because once I give you the story, it's yours. How you're going to use it, how you're going to change it is up to you. So you can take a story and make it, what you want out of it. Who is your audience? What is it that the message that you want to put in the story? That can be done. And for that, I'm going to pick a story that all of you know. In fact, it is the story of the tortoise and the hare. And what was the story about? It was about this arrogant hare who thought that he was the fastest and nobody could beat him. And he was always bullying the poor tortoise, isn't it? You all know the story, so I don't have to tell you the story. And then what happens in the end? Somebody who nobody expected to win, everybody laughed at him, all the other animals, but he won because he was slow and he was steady and he never gave up. But have you at any point sat back to think, what is the message in this story? How is it that the hare, who was the fastest, still lost? Have you thought of it? Have you thought of the why? And from today, this is what I want you to do. When you hear a story, look at what the messages are within that story. So let's come back to the tortoise and the hare. Look at the hare. He knew he was the fastest. He knew he had no competition. He was very complacent. He was arrogant. And on the other side, he had other things that were bothering him too. He had no inspiration. There was no motivation. He wasn't motivated. He knew he would win. So he didn't have that within him, that kind of, the want of winning something like the tortoise did. He never gave up. Very different. On one side, somebody completely complacent was sure that I will win. On the other side, even though he was being laughed at, even though he knew before he started that he was going to lose, he still didn't give up. He didn't stop halfway when he saw the hare had, raced off far ahead of him and he would never reach the finishing line before the hare. So look at that. That is what you need to understand from that story. But let me tell you, and many more versions of this story, and each one has a message which is slightly different. So version number 2. The hare, when he lost the race, was furious. And he refused to accept his defeat. And he said, I want one more race. This was not good enough. So the tortoise had to agree, because he said, okay, I agree. But this time, I want to choose the route that we run. Okay, said the hare. And they decided a day. He decided the route, the tortoise. And then on the given time and date, the race started. And this time, the hare was so adamant that he was going to win that he just ran. He didn't think of anything else. But the hare didn't realize that the tortoise had thought of a very interesting plan. He had made the route in such a way that there was a big lake in between the finishing line, the starting line, and the finishing line. So when he came to the lake, he realized he couldn't swim. So he stood there wondering what he was supposed to do. While the tortoise, slow and steady, still came. And by sundown, he was at the edge of the lake. He quickly slipped in and swam his way to the other side. And this time, the hare, who was a good sport, had to accept that he went lost. And you know what the outcome of this was? The two of them became the best of friends. And version number 3 story, they often sat around, talking, sitting under the trees in the forest, because they were such good friends. And one day, when they were together, as the sun was just about to set, they heard the roar of a tiger nearby. And they both looked at each other and they said, what are we going to do? The tiger is out hunting. And he's going to definitely kill both of us and eat us. He sounds very angry and hungry. But they put their heads together and they came up with a plan. The hare said, look, tortoise, sit on my back. Why don't I run away from here as fast as I can? The tortoise said, that's a very good idea, but I would like to say, run towards the lake. At the lake, I will carry you on my back and we will swim to freedom. And that's exactly what they did. So, ladies and gentlemen, what are the lessons in these two versions of the story? In the first one, where he changes the route, what did the tortoise do? He looked at the weaknesses of his opponent. Okay, the weakness was he couldn't swim. He also thought of solutions, because you know that every problem has more than one solution. So he thought out of the box and he thought of a way that he could still win. And what was that way? To swim across the lake and to make sure that he did the new route. What else? So these are the types of things that these stories are giving you, and this is very, very important for the way that the brain works, I told you, because you will also come in your life into situations like this, where you have an opponent who looks at it, unbeatable, but there'll always be a way, if you look for weaknesses, what are the weaknesses of this opponent, you can still win. And that is what the second story taught us. And the third one is all about friendship, thinking, two heads being better than one, and also, looking at where you can collaborate and use two strengths to win over a conflict or a problem that lies in front of you. Now, I have one more version which I found in an old book that my father had presented me when I was all about 12 years old. And this version is very, very interesting because here there's another race. After that, the hare is still not happy. He says, no, I want to have another race, and this time I'm going to choose the route. You just tell me which day and which time. So the tortoise again had to agree. And when he came back home, he looked very, very dejected. So his wife asked him, what's wrong? And he told her all about another race that he had to run with the hare. And she said, I think I have the way that we can win this race. The two of us look identical. The hare will never be able to tell us apart. I tell you what I will do. I will go and wait at the halfway point, and you stay at the starting point. When the hare returns, you will be there waiting for him. But he will think that you are running ahead of him. So this is the way that it will work. And she told him all the ways that her strategy was going to work. And the next day, the day of the race, the hare was ready and waiting. And he ran like the wind towards the halfway line. And as he reached there, much to his surprise, Tortoise was there. And he had only one thing to say, hello, hare. You're a little slow today, aren't you? The hare was motivated even more, and he ran even faster. And then he reached the end of the race to the finishing line. But he realized he had lost because Tortoise was waiting for him. And he said, I've been waiting for you. What took you so long? So this is winning with deceit. So I wanted to ask you all, what are the things that you learned from a story of the tortoise and the hare? And there are tortoises and the hares all over in our world too. There's so much of deceit that is there to win. Look at the deceit. Look at the fake news that goes on. Look at, different aspects of deceit which is there in our lives. Would you do something deceitful just to win? That's a thought I want to put in for you. Now, you must be thinking this tortoise and the hare and all that is all nonsense. It's impossible. It's just a fairy tale. So I want to prove you wrong. And I want to tell you about the real tortoise and the hare story, everybody. And this is about the great Melbourne Marathon, the most grueling marathon in the world because it's 875 kilometers. And the terrain is very rugged and very rough. So the first one was organized in 1993. And, famous runners from all over the world wanted to be there because it was a marathon. Nike had sponsored stuff, there was big prize money. And on the day of the race, an old man turned up. He was not even wearing sports gear. He had some funny boots on. And they all, the media was started laughing at him. They said, do you know what this race is? It's called the Melbourne Marathon, and you are on worldwide TV. And you're going to, run with all these super fast marathon runners. And he said, yes, I think I can run. Then who are you? He says, I'm a sheep farmer. Sheep farmer? Have you ever run a marathon before? He said, no, but I have 2,000 acres and more than 2,000 sheep. So ever since I was a little child, I have been running mountains to look for sheep whenever it's raining or snowing. I think I can run. And when he started, he was walking in a very shuffling type of manner. Everybody laughed, and it was all covered in the news also, that this, fool, he's going to make a fool of himself. Now, what he didn't know was that the marathon was aligned because it was 875 kilometers. They had to run for 18 hours and they were allowed to rest for 6. He didn't know that. So he kept walking and walking. It's a marathon, right? Shuffling. And on the second day, they found the runners, when they started running in the morning, they found that he was just a little behind them. And they realized that he hadn't run. They said, oh, forget about it. By evening, he's not going to run anymore because it's a 5-day marathon. But would you believe it? to cut a long story short, he won. He won the marathon. And, Australia being such a, like a sports country, he was made a hero. And, it is really interesting because his shuffling way of walking, when, much, much, much later, they found that that was the best way to walk actually in a marathon, because it was, gave them the most, they made them less tired, and they helped them walk actually faster. So all this is there. If you Google his name is Cliff Young, you will find this news. I mean, the whole story about this particular gentleman. He passed away just a few years ago, but he won one more marathon when he was 80 something. It was meant for older people, and he won it again. And he died when he was 93 or something. So you can, something like that, because he was already 61. So maybe 20 years ago, 1993. So 2013 or something, he died. But coming back to the deceit, there's one more story which happened recently in France, where there was a pair of twins and they took part in a marathon in France. And the twins, what they did, they were identical twins. So one started off, and that somewhere towards, the other one kind of ran and he finished, and, he won. Nobody could identify the difference between the two, so he won. But when they re-looked at the video coverage, some television station, they found that they had a kind of band on their hands, and one was on the left hand and the other one was on the right hand. And then they realized that there was something wrong here, and they found that these were a pair of twins, and they had actually deceived the marathon board and won the race. Of course, they were disqualified for ever taking part in any race. So this is the way it is. Life is sometimes, stranger than fiction. So I thought, I would share this story with you. And I'm sure that from these, different versions of the tortoise and the hare, already you are also getting different messages of what the story is telling us. And let me continue, because you're all waiting for more stories. So I thought it would be very interesting for me to share a Singapore story with you, and it has a connection with India. And this story is written by a very good storyteller friend of mine from Singapore. Her name is Sheila Wee, and it's all about the origin of Singapore. So the story goes like this. Once upon a time in India, there lived a powerful king. He was not just powerful, he was also rich beyond your wildest dreams. And he had conquered everything, all the countries around him. And all those countries had to pay tax to him. And he wanted all the kings of those countries to say that he was the most powerful king in the world. But he heard there was one king from a far, far away country called China who refused the emperor of China to say that Raja Suran was the most powerful king in the world. So he said, the emperor of China needs to be taught a lesson. I'm going to take my army and I'm going to defeat the emperor in China. And so he started to make arrangements to create the biggest army that the world had ever seen. So he asked all the countries that he had conquered to supply him soldiers and ammunition and elephants and horses. And they say that it was so big that you could not even count the number of soldiers, or count the number of elephants, or count the number of horses or arms or swords that they had. But he didn't know where China was. He said, I think China's in the south, so we will start by going into Myanmar and follow the route to China. So when they went into Myanmar and they walked through the forests, when they came out, there was no more forests left. And when they came through rivers, the rivers dried up because there were so many soldiers and so many animals. And the villagers said that it took them 6 months to cross one village. That was the size of this army. Finally, they reached Thailand, and from Thailand, they walked and walked and walked till they reached a little island. And this island was Singapore. They crossed it through Malaya. And this little island at that time, they didn't have a name called Singapore. They called it Temasek. And he stayed there. And he said, I think I will need to make some ships. So we will have to stop here for a while. Meanwhile, the traders from China who came to all these lands started to carry the news of this huge army of Raja Suran going to attack the emperor in China. They told their friends told their friends, and soon from the friends and their friends, it reached the ear of the emperor that there was this huge army of Raja Suran making its way to China. So he called all his ministers and they sat and they pondered the whole night that what would be the best strategy at this point. There was a very big army coming towards China. Just as the sun was rising, one of the ministers, the oldest minister, he jumped up and said, I think I have it. The emperor said, what is it? He said, I'd like to whisper it, sire, into your ear. And he whispered his idea into the ear of the emperor. The emperor laughed and he said, I think that is perfect and it will work. So get on with it. So the people of China were all asked if they had needles to send them all to the palace of the emperor. So within a few days from all over China, bucketfuls of needles started arriving to the palace. And then they were also told they want to look for ships, the oldest ships in all the harbors of China. And finally they found one. The planks were old and they creaked when you walked. The nails were all rusty and it was wobbling a little bit. And the minister looked at it and said, perfect. He told all the people in the palace, collect all the needles and from the needles, pick out all the rusty ones. Do we throw them away, sire? No, I want the rusty ones, not one to be thrown away. Fill them into sacks and put it onto the ships. And then he said, I want the biggest fruit trees to be replanted, to be taken out of the ground and replanted into pots and taken to the ships. So all this took a few weeks, and when everything was ready, they set sail towards Temasek. As the ship, oh, I forgot, there was one more thing that the ship carried. The oldest people in China. In fact, some of them were so old, they had to be carried into the ships. And finally, after many weeks of sailing, they reached the harbors near Singapore, where Rajasuran's navy saw and intercepted this old ship. And when they saw what the cargo it carried and they saw the people on board, they started laughing. And they said, what are you doing here? Do you know that this belongs to Raja Suran? I said, yes, but before they could finish, they were taken to the harbor into Singapore where Raja Suran was waiting for them. And he asked them, who are you? And why have you come here? And why is your ship so old? And why are you all so old? And they said, we, sire, we are from China. When we left China, we were younger than you all. We were carrying seeds and needles, new needles to sell. The seeds have all grown and they've become trees, and now they have become fruit trees. They're growing and giving us fruit. So many years have passed by and we have become old and weak. That is how far China is. When the king heard this, he was not very sure whether he wanted to do the trip to China. And he said, I think I'd rather go back. And before he went back, he married a beautiful princess from the Sea King's daughter. And the princes that were born are actually the people who founded Singapore. That's another story, and I will tell you that another time when I meet you. So this is the story. But the reason I told you this story is about how, something that looks so big and impossible to defeat can still be defeated if you if you think out of the box and come up with solutions that are like really unexpected. There's always more than one solution to problems. So this is what I wanted to tell you about Raja Suran and his story. So here, if there's any questions, I'll take it instead of only me talking. So do put in questions in the chat if you want about stories, about anything else that you would like to share with me or ask me. Do put it in, because we need to, come back to what we came to I came here to talk to you about, and that is the kind of change that we are seeing, and how is storytelling going to help us in this kind of a change. So while you think of questions, I think I will carry on. And here, I want to tell you another very, very interesting story, I think, and it's a parable. It's again about the Creator. And I want you at the end of this story to tell me what you understand about this story. Okay? So the story goes like this. A holy man and the Creator was once having dinner in a tavern between the two worlds. The tavern was old and dingy. And the holy man looked at the Creator and he said, I've always wanted to know a little bit about heaven and earth. The Creator looked at him and said, come with me. And he took him behind the tavern to the barn. And there were two doors, identical doors. The Creator opened one of them and asked the holy man to look inside. And what he saw was a table. And on the table was a large pot with a steaming soup inside. And around the table sat men and women, emaciated, gray, sad. And each one of these emaciated, gray people had with them a long spoon, a spoon with a long stem. And with that, they tried to take the soup and put it into their mouths. But the stems were too long and they couldn't reach it, and it just fell to the ground. The holy man was very saddened to see this. The Creator looked at him and said, this is hell. Close the door. Now he opened the second door. And when the holy man looked inside, it was an identical room with an identical table, with an identical cauldron with smoking soup. But around it were happy, jolly men and women laughing, joking. The holy man looked at the Creator and said, I don't understand. He said, wait. And as he watched, he saw that they also had a spoon with a long stem. But this time, they put the spoons into the soup and they fed the people in front of them. Laughing, talking, joking, healthy. This is heaven. So, ladies and gentlemen, what do you think this story is trying to teach us? I definitely want one or two of you to tell me what you think is the hidden messages in these two stories. Let us look at it. Again, heaven and hell. Anybody? Nina, miss? Dr. Nina, go ahead.
Giving is living. So you give and
Giving.
you grow.
Yes. Yes, Mr. Rajan.
Yes, hell is full of selfishness.
Yes. Selfishness, yes.
I think there are some messages in the chat
Yeah,
also.
looking at Mohan said, help each other and spread the happiness. Yes, that is heaven. But very good. You can see on one side, people are selfish. They don't want to share. They don't want to work together. So it's also about, an important point that I want to talk about, to come back to the situation and the crisis that we spoke about. Heaven and hell are made by you. It's the same room. It's the same table. It's the same soup in the cauldron, and it is the same spoon. But one took those same things and made a very happy life out of it, and the other made a hell out of it. So, we have the ability as humankind, I think, to cross all these barriers and obstacles that come in our way. If we, use we think and we use our common sense, and I think, and we think out of the box. Okay, so there's lots of people. We are creating our own hell and heaven. Absolutely, Rajalakshmi. Absolutely. That is exactly it. And you can see it all around us, isn't it? There are people, however, poor they might be, there's always a smile on their faces and they're quite happy. So it's very interesting. So this kind of a story is really interesting. And that comes up to us now. So what is it that we need, when we are looking at this time in the history of this planet? Okay, so just like the 5 C's, we also need the 5 R's. What are the 5 R's that we need? It's resolve, it's resilience, it's return, it's reimagination, and it's reform. We have to change completely the way that we think, the way that we work, the way that we are going to be studying. Everything is going to change. So we have these 5 R's that we have to have for the next normal, not for the new normal, but for the next normal. Okay, so let's look at one of the R's, and that is resilience, because I think everything comes under the umbrella of resilience. If you have resilience, it doesn't matter what the situation is, you will still overcome. And this is something that you need to work on and become resilient. So I have a little story for you about resilience. So let me just tell you that story. And maybe after this story, you can also tell me on chat what you think of this story. And it's called The Two Wolves. And this is a very, very old story from the American Cherokee tribe. It's a very short story. And it goes like this. An old Cherokee was sitting with his grandchildren around a fire one evening and teaching them about life. And he told them, there's a big battle inside me, and there are 2 wolves fighting. One wolf is full of fear and anger and envy and sorrow and regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego. While the other wolf is full of joy and peace, love, sharing, security, humility, empathy, kindness, generosity, compassion, and faith. And he looked hard at his grandchildren. The littlest one turned to the grandfather and asked him, Grandfather, who will win? Which of the 2 wolves will win? The one that I feed, my son. The one that I feed will win. Okay. So if you feed the wolf that has got fear and anger and resentment and superiority and ego, then that is the one that will win the war, which is within you. While if you look at empathy and kindness, the other wolf, love and sharing and generosity and peace, that is the wolf that will win. We have both of it inside us. And what are we learning from this story? There's a lot of things people have put, but I think they are unable to chat. It's okay. So, are we allowing them to chat? No? So we can move on. So what are we teaching with this story? Dr. Nina, would you like to tell us if you have
No, I was just asking Priya. I wanted to ask Priya if she can enable chatting, because then people can chat and ask questions.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, participant can chat. Participant, please put your answers towards or if your opinion about the story in the chat box. Otherwise, you can unmute yourself. And is it fine, ma'am, if they unmute and
No problem. Go ahead. It should be very much like that, as long as they learn, they remember to mute themselves after they speak. That's fine.
And if please unmute yourself and you can give your opinion.
Okay, let me start with the question. Sureka, can you please
Yeah.
just tell me the 5 R's once again? Resolve, resilience, reimagination. What are the other two?
Return. When you're
Return,
looking at, return, reimagination and reform.
Okay.
This is but specifically looking at management because, since the students, so many of them are management students, I thought, but it's like for everybody. We are looking at all these, things that you need to bring in if you want to become successful in this new world that we are talking about post-COVID. Yeah. And anyway, because we only have, what's the time now? Time is like, 7. So we have only till 7:30. So I think we'll move on. But I think here with this story, what I was trying to talk about is self-control, controlling your emotions. So when you go out now into this new normal that we spoke about, we have to first talk about ourselves. Because within everybody, there is a raging battle between these two wolves. But how are we going to have emotional control, emotional self-control? Because for success, you need that. You need emotional self-control. So this story is teaching us about that it's something that is there and we need to deal with it every day, this fight that is going on. Okay, so that's what. Okay, here, Mohana, each individual should be able to manage good and bad in their life. Yes, managing of the self-control and managing of the emotions. Absolutely, Mohana, it's, dead on. This story is about that. And I have one more story when we talk about resilience, which I thought was very interesting. And this is, the story is called The Carrot, the Egg, and the Coffee Beans. Have you heard the story, Nina? You have. Okay. Okay. So I thought it was a very interesting story and it kind of, puts us all into one box. I mean, one of these boxes, I think. Okay. So let me tell you this story. A young woman was really, stressed out at work and she went to her mother and said, I think I'm going to give up. The stress and all these problems that I have is too much for me. The mother didn't say anything, but took her into the kitchen and took 3 pots of boiling water and put them, 3 pots of water and put them on the fire, 3 individual fires. And then what she did was she put the carrot into one, she put the egg into one, and she put the coffee beans into the third one. And they sat and they watched for 20 minutes as the boiling of the water happened. And after that, she asked her daughter, what do you see? She said, I see a carrot, I see an egg, and I see some coffee beans. So the mother took out the carrot and put it in a plate. She took out the egg and she put it into a plate. And she took the water from the coffee beans and she put it into a container. And then she said, now what do you see? And when the daughter touched the carrot, she said, oh, the carrot has become soft. The mother then told her, break the egg open. And when she broke the egg, it was boiled. The shell had hardened and the egg inside had hardened too. And finally, the mother told the daughter, I want you to sip the water now that the beans have been boiled in. And the girl sipped and it was delicious coffee. So the girl, she said, I don't understand. How is this to do with my problems? So the mother said, the problem or the conflict or the obstacle is like the water, the boiling water. If you're a carrot, what happened? It's hard carrot. When you put in the obstacle or the problem or the conflict makes it soft, while the egg, which was malleable and liquid inside, became hard. But the coffee beans was able to change the water into something even more delicious. So look at it, daughter. Are you the carrot who's strong, but when there are problems, completely softens? Or are you like the egg, which is malleable, but when put in water, becomes hard without any empathy? Or are you like the coffee bean, where when you're put into the water, it changes the whole surrounding of the water and changes everything around it? Which one are you? So look at the story and you can see that you can be either the carrot, or you can be the egg, or you can be the coffee bean, changing the situation by the good energy and the good, good that you bring in, and how you take a conflict or a situation which is very, very difficult and make it very, change it into something that is so palatable and delicious, like the coffee. So this is a story of the carrot, the egg, and the coffee bean. So these are all stories about how you can change. You can, once you understand the story, you can see that everybody, we all have our weak points, but I think we can change and we can make ourselves strong. And that's what you need when you step into this world that we are speaking about. We've already stepped in there and we need to be strong. It's all difficult and crisis around us. And I want to end off by telling you a little story about the farmer and the donkey. And this, I thought, was a very cute story. There was a farmer who had an old donkey. And one day, this old donkey fell into an unused well on the farm. And it was crying and crying. And the old man stood there wondering how to get this donkey out. He said, anyway, this well needs to be covered. I don't think I'll bother. He's not going to be able to work much for him. So he called all his neighbors and they all came with shovels and they started to take dirt and put it to close the well. The donkey cried and cried, and after a while they noticed that there was no more sounds coming from him. So they thought maybe the poor fellow is dead, and they peeped in, and to their surprise they found that for each shovel of dirt they put into the well, the donkey shook the dirt off and climbed up one step, till finally it came right up to the top of the well and walked away happily. So all of us have dirt thrown on us all the time. So are we going to get drowned into it, in that dirt? Or are we going to shake it off like the donkey did and put one step up and climb up? And then come out of the situation, which was the well, is what I thought I would tell you about the donkey and the farmer. So here I think we will ask some questions and then, please give some advice for engaging millennials as the span of attention is lesser nowadays. Yeah, okay. So Mohana, maybe you can unmute yourself and you can tell me, have you tried storytelling, and what was the, what kind of subjects are we looking at when you're looking at this, these students? Mohana? So, because, there is a lot of stress. And but the storytelling is really a really good tool. And maybe, because sometimes, when you are, I have found this with a lot of teachers, maybe specifically high school teachers, what happens is, they think that if there is a particular subject, there will be one story to match that particular concept for that particular subject. That's not how storytelling works. So maybe, for you, what is really interesting is, what is storytelling? Storytelling is not only the type of stories that I was telling you. Instagram is also storytelling. Social media is also storytelling. So this is the way to, get people, like you are saying, the millennials. So the stories can be, various ways that you can do this and to get their attention. And I found that, people love to talk about their own stories. And this is one thing that you can start with HR. I did it as an activity for a group of teachers in Singapore, and starting with personal stories, your own story, what happened to you, and it's always interesting because from this will come out all the things that you wanted to tell the HR team. In any case, from these stories will come out stories of empathy, stories of people letting them down, stories of like all kinds of stories came in. So one, I think, is family stories is really good. Also you can have but I think, Mohana, what you can do is, because yours is so specific, I have no issues. You can get my mobile number from Nina later on, Dr. Nina. Give me a call. We'll look at the specific niche that you're looking at. What is your objective? I was just going to come to that. What is your objective when you're doing your storytelling? That is also really important, because that will also kind of why are you doing it, then that will help you to like find the right story. So maybe what we can do is we can talk on the phone and discuss this more, because it is like I don't have enough information to give you the advice that you have asked for. So
I have been listening to your session this whole time with my mother, and I
yes,
am a millennial in sixth. I'm in sixth standard, and I'm 11 years old, and I love your
okay,
storytelling session, ma'am.
thank you. And what is your name?
My name is Vishnu Priya Pitani, ma'am.
Okay, see, Mohana, if Vishnu Priya likes my stories, I'm sure your HR team will also like your stories, because sometimes the 12-year-olds and 11-year-olds are the most difficult to get interested in the stories, isn't it? So, but I think coming back to storytelling, no, there are some wonderful resources available online. And as one lady put it, what is a good story? It's not what is a good story. How good can you make your story? So that is what it is. So any story, you can take it, and then you can decide what is your objective, what is it that you want to bring out through this story, and that is the way to then work on the story. It's not easy to do storytelling in a classroom. It's you have to plan. And I think Dr. Nina will say that that you do need to have some storytelling for educators lessons to understand how it works, and what kinds of stories, how you get into because just like the HR team, the children are also very different. The university students are also very different. Some of because they all have multiple intelligences, some of them are more dominant. So how are you going to get all of them? And there, so that is the thing. So there are many tools that you can use to make it much more interactive. So maybe we can talk about it.
Good evening, ma'am.
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening, Surekha, ma'am. Here myself is Mrs. Pallavi Singh from Varanasi, and
Okay.
I'm very much impressed that how you just get me communicated and contacted in the like in the consistent form, and I'm not able to get involved in other kind of activities. So you are just in the online, in the virtual mode. You are so attractive that we are able to understand and you are able to connect each and every context and every life standard. And myself, I just work as an assistant professor in management department.
Okay.
So here I would like to know, ma'am, that like you are having such kind of a like a X factor that you are able to engage each and every people in this particular meeting. So, ma'am, I just would like to know that how myself I just want to engage my students of management final year, because I am as well as HR faculty, and I used to teach personality management, strategic management. So I want to get that how I'm able to just let my students get engaged in my storytelling in order to get particular understanding with the particular topic. Because
Oh,
when I used to explain the stories in my form, in my way, I'm able to that I feel that students are able to grab that particular thing, but at the end they are only engaged in the stories, not in that the particular what is the motive behind that particular topic. So that is why I just would like to know, because the student says that, ma'am, I'm very interested with the stories, but at the end, when I say that you just understood the motive behind that particular stories, so they said, ma'am, I'm not able to get that or something like that. So I just
Okay.
would like.
Okay, what I suggest to you is actually look at the tortoise and the hare story. Okay, the first one where he wins. Nobody thought the tortoise would win, and then link it back into something to do with management. And in this case, I would like to talk about Steve Jobs. Look at Apple and look at IBM. What was IBM 30 years ago? It was like at the head. Everybody was IBM, IBM, IBM. It was this boring gray machine that everybody used with a green screen. And do you know that Steve Jobs, when he came up with his drag and drop and all these kind of new system, everybody laughed at him, just like the tortoise was laughed at. And they made him bankrupt, because you can imagine how powerful IBM was.
Yes.
Okay, but he did not stop. He still, and I remember when in the 90s in Singapore, when we first got that iMac, we were all so excited to get these bright blue, and I think we had a orange one or something. And the mouse which used to have that, that light up of the mouse and all that, was completely different. And what did he do? He put the word I into it. What did he do that? iMac, it was some way, it was the first person who brought the product and the person buying it as if it was specially made for that person. He managed to do that. And that's why I started with his quotation, because even today, the way that Apple takes its how they sell their products is like through a story. It's always a story, not so much the product. And people line up to buy an Apple product everywhere. What
Yes,
happened to this
are
fastest IBM? This is the kind of thing you need to do.
so much happy that with the example of this iPhone also, you are telling so much that you have gone into depth that I is also a word which has been involved in particular
Yeah,
product by Steve Jobs. That is
correct. The
very
I, yeah,
much, ma'am.
the I. It's all about you, not the product that I'm selling you. That is
Exactly.
there. And for you, there's one more thing I want you to look at, which is, when you talk about a company, because you're doing management, we always talk about financial capital, we speak about human capital, and we speak about social capital. But now there's something called psychological capital that you can talk to your children or students about. And there's something called HERO, HERO. So what does HERO stands for? Hope is the
Oh,
H. Then there is efficacy. You can always Google this, you'll get more stuff about it. And R is resilience, and O is optimism. So, through hope, when the meaning of hope here is making a new pathway to how you're going to handle this situation that is in front of us, the problem is which is in front, the obstacle, the conflict in front of us, whatever is the, what is there in the company that is having, where you need to bring this in. And these kinds of stories of resilience and all are very good for your students. They will really, really, I think, and then link it immediately to an app, real case. And here I had actually one more example to give you, and that was when you are doing a story. I was looking at this particular case. There was a very, very famous CEO, and his name was Jack Welch. You will not know him because he died in, I think, 2003. But when he took over GE, he in 20 years, books were written about him. And when he retired, he was given 400 and 500 million or something. It was like the biggest payout to somebody as a staff of that particular company. But what I wanted to bring here in, about him is the fact that, when you talk about an organization, and he talked about something that happened to him. He was very much into hockey when he was in high school. So when he lost the match, he threw the hockey stick and he walked into the, where they all meet to have their showers and changing rooms. His mother ran there and in front of all his friends gave him one box on his ear and said, if you don't know how to win, then how will you, if you don't know how to lose, then how will you know what it is to win?
very
And
nice, ma'am. Very
he
nice.
says
Thank.
that changed him, immediately. And he said, okay, that might have changed him. So these are the kinds of things you do. You bring in situations which actually make sense to them, because they're a different generation. These old, fogey tales may not interest them. But
Ma'am,
when you
that
link it with
you are just
something,
telling about. Yes, ma'am. You're the main thing you're telling me that the mention the major thing about generation gap. I
yeah,
used to my context, they used to understand in their context. That is
Yeah.
the main thing you're telling about. That is the generation issue. Yes,
Oh,
ma'am. I'm
yeah.
much
Yeah, so
grateful
you
to
have to go into, for Facebook storytelling, Instagram storytelling. You have to put that Cherokee story into Instagram. You have to summarize it and put it, as a thought for them. The two wolves, what are the two wolves?
that. You can be suggest some kind of a websites regarding that I can engage with that storytelling of a kind of opinion I should get in, or I should engage with you, or I should contact you.
Yeah, just
If
contact me. It's much better
yeah,
because,
ma'am, I request you that please inbox me or just give me the number of Miss Surekha Day, ma'am. Please.
I'm sure they will give it
Definitely,
to you.
Pallavi.
And I have one more
Definitely.
question, which is really important. And I think it was about, handicapped children. And, I wanted to tell this person, where is he or she? I don't, it's just gone. I just wanted to tell you that I do a lot of work with the parents and educators of autism children, and storytelling. It's a completely different type of storytelling there. And what
Yes, ma'am.
happens
This
with
is Vijayalakshmi, ma'am. This is Dr. Vijayalakshmi from
yeah,
SA College of Science. I only posted this question, ma'am.
yeah. So when
Yes, ma'am. I also do a kind of service for autistic children. I do regular visit to the school where I do counseling, diet counseling, especially for autistic and other disabled children. So I just want to know particularly about how far the storytelling will help or improve or
absolutely.
yes.
No, what you do is you also, I will talk to, Dr. Nina. Maybe we can do a workshop actually for educators who are only handling ASD. It's completely different. Because remember, they have their visual cortex. There's problems there with different cortexes in the ASD children. So you have to be able to handle the fact that they have a problem to read body language. They have a problem to understand emotions. So how do you bring in that storytelling? But I'll share a little, anecdote with you. One of my storytelling classes, the lady who came in was the principal of a special school in Delhi. And she said during this COVID time, it was all one-to-one. Nobody was coming to school. And this 12-year-old, for half an hour, he'll be screaming and crying, doesn't want to come in front of the camera. And then she told him one of the stories I had taught her. And he said, for the first time, he said in Hindi, Aaj to maza aa gaya. And she said that really, made me realize that if you actually find a way to access these children, they can also, enjoy storytelling. So there is a different way of storytelling there. So.
Yes, ma'am. Because I could notice one thing from your session, because the way you are telling the story, it actually stimulates all the sensory organs, the way you narrate the story. So definitely the artistic children need a kind of thing
Yeah,
like this
yeah.
thing. So that's what, no, how far,
Gesture
yes,
stories and all you have to do. You have to do gesture. You have to be very careful about sound there because some of them don't like too much of sound. So there are many
yes,
ways. And there's lots of resources that I'll introduce you to from the libraries of the US, where there are books and all that for the older children with, little drawings so they can visually see. They may not be able to understand or read the word, but from the visuals, it's like very interesting. I have all these resources. So do contact me and then we can, or
yes,
we will
ma'am.
probably organize a class and then you can join in.
Please, please, please. And
Yeah.
if possible, can you share me some kind of storybooks or any website for the special, particularly for this kind of children? So
Okay.
please.
First, I think you have to understand how to access them before I just give you the storybooks. So you have to learn get the tools first. How do you do the sensory stories? How do you do the gesture stories? How do you do? There are different types of stories you do with them. It's completely different from this
Okay.
type of storytelling I did today. They won't understand what you're talking about.
Yes.
If you do a storytelling. And I'll introduce you to a group. Some of them are my students who are also parents of 19-year-old, 21-year-old children. And they've started a blog. They are already doing storytelling and they are reaching out to me. And they are, the 19-year-old never spoke till a year and a half. Now with a keyboard, he can communicate. And he tells his mother what's wrong with his storytelling. It's very cute. You have no gesture, very boring. These are the things that come out of, and she shares it with me. She says, ma'am, I'm so happy that he's actually talking to me, through the computer. So I can understand, from that mother, how she must have felt. So
Very nice hearing to you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Suresh. Thank you so much. Please share whatever the materials you have. and definitely
Yeah.
I will keep in touch with you.
Yeah.
Thank
Ma'am, can we take one more question, because there is a question in the chat box. Professor Linta, the question is how to link storytelling with industrial growth.
Okay, so you have to, look at, all the industrial growth means you have to look at a completely, different type of objectives that you will be having. Okay, so you remember that I told you about the 5 R's, and there is, 1 minute, just let me just take a minute. So, you have to, for this industrial growth, you will have to look at stories which have to do with rebuilding. You have to look at rethinking and of the organization. You have to look at recovering revenue. So there are stories that you can get and link it with these areas of the industry. And when you say industrial, there are so many types of industries out there, but it's all basically back to building resilience in them, talking about the hero, the psychological capital that we never look at. So these are the areas. So what are we doing? We are building the human capital with giving them all these things, making them get aware about what is hope, what is gratitude, what is resilience. These are the things that you need in this world that is out there. It is almost the same. And so these stories, you see, what happens is when you tell a story, the brain is taking that information, and then they are able to I told you, it's like a jigsaw out there. The patterns are being put into when there is a particular conflict. They are taking something from here, and coming up with some kind of a solution there. That's what happens with storytelling. So through the obstacles that the tortoise had, you're looking at the strengths, the weaknesses, the SWOT analysis of these two characters. Like these kinds of things happen, and how do you overcome a big problem at work. And let me share with this industrial, the question about the industrial storytelling. I have something very interesting that I was reading when I was working for this storytelling session. I was reading about the fact that so many companies went under during this COVID time, and there was this company in China which went against all odds because of that resilience, because of that what they built with it. What happened was, they were a company that was a car hire company. So complete lockdown. No one is allowed. Who was using? All the companies were closed who were using cars. Roads were empty. So they sat. There were some 19 employees, and they said, we have to fight this. We have all these things with us, all these cars. What are we going to do? So they found a micro niche among some of their customers, that they were wanting to go to office. They had to go, but the office had told them, don't use public transport, don't take safe cars, and take a car that is known car and all that. So what they did was, they came up with a system where no touch, the doors would open, everything was no touch. And they, in 11 months of COVID, they have doubled their profit from the time before COVID. So these are the kinds of stories, if you Google, you will get real stories of success in this period, how people have come up with so many ideas and then become even more successful. We have all become, actually, much more we are thinking, and much more we are doing than we ever did. We had all become like the hare, very complacent. Go to work in the morning, come back, no motivation. But now, change it from the two wolves, get all the positive things going. That two wolf story is very good for your industry people also, looking at which one are you feeding. That is really good. Levani, you had a very interesting question. I didn't have time to answer it, but you Google a story called One Grain of Rice. Okay. It's a mathematical story about cumulative effect of 1 becoming 2, becoming 3. And you can use it for COVID. Because when I did the story with my teachers, and we were looking at the various objectives that story could have, it's called One Grain of Rice. Okay. And if you Google it, you can get it on YouTube. Listen to the story. And it's about a girl and how she gets the Raja to give them, he doesn't give them rice, and there's a famine. So 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4. And by the end of 1 month, it becomes 1 billion grains of rice. So she manages to get all the granaries of the kingdom emptied. finally, has to give it to her. And he asks her at the end, what are you going to do with all this rice? And she says, I'm going to feed everybody. And here's one bag for you. And he gives to the king. And the king says sorry to her. But I used it as a COVID story, showing them like, one person who is sick, if he doesn't wear a mask, will become 2, will become 4. In 1 month, whole of India, 1 billion people will get COVID. These are the kinds of, you have to use your own, 5 C's, as I told you, your own creativity to take a story which is nothing to do with COVID and link it to them. They'll understand. So remember that story. It's called One Grain of Rice.
Yeah, sure, ma'am. Sure, definitely. Thank you so much, ma'am, for a wonderful session. I loved it.
Okay.
Get connected in
You're most
future.
welcome.
I would like
All
to get.
right.
It will
Yeah,
really
if you
be in my research, in my PhD, as well as in my career also, ma'am. Thank you so much.
all right. All right.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Ma'am, it was such an energetic and lively session, ma'am. We have actually had a whale of a time listening and enjoying all your stories. And I couldn't believe how you started off with the creator and came to the 5 R's. We will definitely use all those techniques in our classes, ma'am. Thank you very much.
You're most welcome. And thank you
And
for inviting me.
it's a pleasure to have you with us, ma'am, today.
Okay. Thank you,
Okay.
Dr. Nina and Dr. Major, for thinking about me and inviting me.
You're one of the, 2 sessions, 2 wonderful storytellers, two storytelling masterpieces. Ace Innovation, we actually usually set benchmarks. We bring the very best. And we at Ace Innovation, have been born from a story. And the person who started the story will be talking to you next. And we create stories, we mingle into stories, and we have become a story. And this wonderful young story brings stories and storytellers from all over the world. And we connect people, we create a borderless world. And usually, those who tell stories rule the world. And as teachers, you already rule the world. And we are also teachers, so we all rule the world. But, Ace Innovation would love to help you rule the world a little better than what you've already been doing. So we're bringing to you courses. Mrs. Sureka Dev will definitely be a part of it, and we bring to you a lot of techniques and tools of storytelling, a lot of wonderful storytelling methodologies, etc. So we have beginners, intermediate, and advanced courses which we are, thinking about and which will be rolled out as soon as possible. So we would, and we are right today. I know, being a management teacher myself, I do know that there will be a lot of stories which you storytellers would love to tell, and you teachers would love to tell and use it in management. Thank you very much. I request Major to say a few words.
Thank you, Nina. Director, madam, that was really beautiful. 1.5 hours of justice was done. Such a short period, so much of information download. Our teachers are the next generation storytellers. You actually paved the way for them. And we are so proud that you represent Ace Innovation today. And we really want to take this to all teachers. We're already in it. We have been training teachers from SCRT on making storytelling as a pedagogy in teaching. Yeah, we're already into it. And today, after listening to you, and of course, all this audience today, all teachers, they would have clearly understood the importance of storytelling. It's innovation. Actually, we started off with a platform that actually to unite people through storytelling, not just in India, it's globally. So we are kind of connected to about more than 126 countries. Through our platform, we are bringing in storytellers from around the world to share stories, especially during this COVID period. There are a lot of people want to talk. They all are deprived so much to share. And our platform is actually getting recognized. People are coming on board and we are linking them. Likewise, today, your story has reached up to so many people. So justice being done today. And storytelling is the way to go. Just like Steve Jobs' story, the story of the Apple, and inspiration has its story. And we are taking it to the world. Thank you, Madam Sureka, for the wonderful session. And
I'm
really pleased to have you.
I'm sorry, I couldn't answer. Sorry, couldn't answer all the questions on the chat. But if they want to, like, contact me on Facebook or something, put it on chat, I can answer it for them. Because I think, especially with the special needs and all that, I really am passionate about helping these children enjoy the stories, the autism, the spectrum children.
We would definitely pass on the, your phone number and other details so that they can actually get in touch.
All right, that's kind of you.
Okay.
And
I would like to extend my thanks, for linking innovation for this week-long session of storytelling, as well as other sessions that carried on in this webinar by SA College of the Arts and Science. I'd like to thank the correspondent, Mr. P. Venkatesh Raja, the director, Dr. Satyavadi, Principal, Dr. Malathi, and the program organizer, Professor Ms. K.B. Priya, for hard work and the coordination. She actually did a wonderful job. Certainly, all audiences, teachers, students, maybe some of the parents who have joined us today, and not forgetting Professor Chandrasekhar, who did the introduction. I'd like to thank everybody, as well as Team Innovation, for the connection today.
Major, you forgot one person. You forgot our 11-year-old who asked that lovely question.
Yes. So I was mentioning the parents and the students. What's the name? Sorry, I missed the name.
Wow. I forgot her name.
She broke the silence in the question and answer session. We actually owe it to her. Thank you. Okay, we all have hope and resilience, and we're going to reform. Thank you. Thank you, Sweka madam. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Major.
Thank you, SA College. We are coming back to you with all our courses and training sessions, and Satish will get in touch. Thank you.
Sure,
Thank
Major.
you,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you, sir. We are really fortunate to have you with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you, Dr. Neena Gayatri, ma'am. We
Yeah.
actually really look forward to have few more sessions like this on storytelling.
Definitely. Even we are looking forward, having been in the as a management teacher for the past 29 years, and I've just stepped into storytelling. I have a particular, that pull is there towards, there's so much in storytelling which we can definitely do, and we'd love to help you. Sureka ma'am is there to guide us, and we will definitely, all of us will work together and, do something. We need to do something.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Sure, ma'am. We'll catch up again in a wonderful session.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I'll take leave then. Bye-bye.
And as the British philosophical writer James Allen once said, no duty is more urgent than giving thanks. We would like to place on record our sincere thanks to Ms. Sureka De for the extraordinary session on the topic integrating storytelling with current industry scenario. And for that, I now call upon our professor, Dr. E. Sambasivan, to propose the oath of thanks. Sir, over to you.
It is my great honor to propose the vote of thanks. You all have helped in making Yes. Yes. First of all, I would like to propose heart thanks to correspondent Ms. Raja for his moral support and guidance. I would like to propose two hand of thanks to our chief guest, Mrs. Surekede, for gracing today webinar with wonderful. Thank you, madam, for very interesting thoughts. So I'm strengthening your storytelling in Quran. Amin Puravadu Udakin Kakkan Kamuravar Kakkarindar means that joy is joy of all the world. Yes, or the learners learn to love their masters love. கற்றவரின் கல்வியால் உலகம் இன்பம் அடைவதற்கென்று கற்றவர் மேலும் மேலும் கற்கப்பட வேண்டும். கல்வி ஒருவருக்கு மாறல்ல மற்றவை ஒருவர் கல்வி ஒன்றால் முடியாத செல்வம் வள்ளுவர். So I like to thank Major Narayanan, founder and CEO, AC Innovations. So I like to thank Dr. Rina Gayatri, CEO, AC Innovations. I like to thank Mr. Satish Kumar, the Strategic Alliances and the Operations of AC Innovations. Now I would like to express our profound gratitude to our principal, Dr. Malati Kumar, for her presence and webinar. I'd like to thank our director, Dr. Sai Satyavati, for her support and guidance. Then I'd like to thank the program coordinator, KB Priya, for all the day for making this event a great success. Then I'd like to thank our staff members, colleagues, parents, children for attending the storytelling webinars. Then I would like to thank the technicians. See, Bharatiyar கனவுகள் வெளிப்பட போய்கிட்டு இருக்கிறது. ஆசிரியர் பேசும் முறைதன் காஞ்சியிலே கேட்பதற்கு ஒரு கருவி செய்வோம். ஸோ அதுபோல சிங்கப்பூர் நாம் நன்றாக கேட்டு இருக்கிறோம். I'd like to thank for technicians. Then I would like to thank faculty members and colleagues and coordinators. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And with that, I think we have come to the end of today's session. And for all the participants, please take a few minutes to fill the feedback form. And thank you all for your patience and kind cooperation. And I hope there is a lot of takeaway from today's session. Thank you, ma'am, for illuminating us. And thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.
And anything in storytelling or anything to do with storytelling, stories, courses, how to connect courses in management, in storytelling or anything, Ace Innovation is just a call away. The websites are there in the chat. The phone numbers are there. You're always welcome to call us. We are ready to do some workshops at colleges for teachers, for students, for anything. And these are unique workshops because we bring stories and storytellers from all over the world. We are a company which believes in values, which believes in a borderless world, which believes that stories can make a difference to the generation next. So help us make that difference. Contact us so that we can make a difference to you and your teaching. Thank you.
SA College of Arts and Science admissions open. For more details log into sacas.ac.in.